This is an ad by Regain Couples Therapy. Let's be honest, loving your partner doesn't mean you always like them, and guess what? That's normal. Regain, powered by BetterHelp, offers couples therapy that's flexible, affordable, and 100% online. Whether you're reconnecting or working through conflict, Regain is here to support you both. See why people wish they'd tried couples therapy sooner. Visit regain.com/couplespod to get 10% off your first month. That's regain.com/couplespod.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Energy to Heal podcast, where we talk about all things healing and authority in Christ and Splankna. I'm a Masters Level Splankna Practitioner for 3 years. My name is Laura, if you're new here, and I'm continuing this podcast because it is my heart's passion to get the word out about how God is using this modality called Splankna to do some amazing miracles in people's lives. And as a practitioner, I see those miracles happen on a weekly basis. And so it is my joy and pleasure to tell you about the cool stories. Today, though, we're talking about how to find a good practitioner. If you've maybe found this podcast because you've heard me on TikTok talk about Splankna, and you came over here because you're curious, what is this thing? And now you're to the point where you're like, okay, I want to give it a try. I've got some unhealed wounds. I've got some triggers. I have some symptoms in my life like anger and anxiety and low self-esteem that I just cannot figure out how to shake on my own. I want to talk to you about how to find a good practitioner. And if you already are a practitioner or you're thinking about becoming one, how to be a good practitioner. Now, my caveat is I by no means consider myself an expert in being a good practitioner. I tell you what, there are incredible people on the splankna.com website. If you click under Find a Practitioner, you can read bios that they've written about themselves, telling you where they're coming from, what their professional background is, what they're passionate about, who they typically work with. And some of these people, I hope to interview them on this podcast someday because the areas of expertise that they have are so deep and fascinating. So I am coming at you from a practitioner of 3 years experience. Before that, I worked with trauma, people in trauma, but in a very different capacity as a registered nurse. And it was at a crisis pregnancy center with women who were facing unbelievably impossible decisions. And they desperately needed somebody to sit with them in their pain and the uncertainty and the fear of the future. I learned so many things about how to connect with someone in that 10 years of working there. One thing that was really important as a nurse in this environment was never ever judging anyone because you don't know their story. And also, like when someone's in crisis, when someone's in trauma, when they're in a healing place, it is definitely not the time to come with any kind of, well, you should just do this. I think you should just, like, their brain for that kind of information, like inserting your opinion, telling them what to do, is very difficult to access that part of your brain when you're working through something very sensitive. So I want to talk a little bit about that aspect as well. Things I've learned in other careers that I think are serving me well as a practitioner now. And if you are a practitioner and you have other things to add to things that you think are just so helpful in your practice, go ahead and leave a comment. I know now on Spotify, you can leave comments on podcast episodes. I would love to hear more from you guys, things that you've honed in on over the years, and maybe even do another episode in the future about those kind of comments that I hear from you. Okay, so you want a practitioner, you get online and you're like overwhelmed. Who do I choose? There's so many. There's 2 ways you can go about this. One of them is you look for a practitioner in your area by putting in the zip code. And because Splankna is relatively new in the inner healing therapy modality world, there might not be someone in your area who is certified as a Splankna practitioner. One thing that is not always obvious is when you go to the website, there's this thing called Listening Prayer Certified that you'll see underneath people's names. And what this means is basically they can just do Zoom calls. They can meet with you over Zoom. And there's no muscle testing involved. It is strictly just listening prayer, asking the Lord to highlight an emotion, an age. And it seems like, how in the world could somebody hear the voice of the Lord that clearly that they could do an entire Splankna session based off of just listening prayer? But I'm telling you, the Lord is just so good and gracious. And I just am so convinced He just covers every place that we have lack. He has so much grace that even when we are not perfect at hearing His voice, I've seen it, I've heard it time and time again. These Zoom meetings are really, really helpful for people. Some people even prefer them to the ones in person. So you always have that option to find someone who's listening prayer certified. You could even ask them, hey, would it be okay if I got on a 10-minute call with you just to kind of meet you, interview you, see if it's a good fit? If you're feeling nervous about just like jumping in right away with someone that you haven't had recommended to you directly from somebody. So just know that you have options, and the goal is that you feel comfortable, because already you're coming in talking about something potentially vulnerable. Oftentimes when it's your first session, people get nervous because they're like, I don't know what's going to come up. I don't know how to prepare for my first session because I don't know what event, what trauma is going to come up. And what if I cry? And what if it's just super uncomfortable to talk about those things? So the person you're with makes a big difference, because if you have this sense that, okay, no matter what comes up, it's going to be fine. I'm going to be comfortable. I'm not going to be judged. A good practitioner, after you meet with them, I want you to reflect and be like, okay, did I feel accepted for who I am and how I handled that trauma, or the thoughts that have stayed in my mind because of that trauma? Because here's the deal. When you're dealing with the subconscious, which we do in Splankna therapy, and I'm talking to practitioners here as well as clients, the subconscious mind is so much more fearful and childlike and dramatic than the conscious mind, because the conscious mind oftentimes has grown up and gotten these adult way of thinking about things, and we rationalize and we dismiss our emotions and we say it's fine. And the subconscious is more like, it is not fine. I am not fine. I need to talk about this, and this is terrible and crazy, and nobody in the entire world is trustworthy. It's just, it can be more extreme. And so as a practitioner, I want you to keep that in mind, because no matter what somebody says to you about the thoughts that they have about a trauma, you have to remember you are hearing oftentimes in a session the thoughts that are bubbling up from their subconscious. And that can be really embarrassing for people because it doesn't match what their conscious mind is telling them. Their reasoning mind is telling them oh, you shouldn't be so sad about this. It wasn't a big deal. And then they're sitting there with bravery telling you, hey, I can hear the panic thoughts in my mind about this. It's not calm. It's not always rational. So remembering that distinction, I think, is super, super important. Helps you come at your client with this sense of acceptance, because there is just no room for judgment here. Everybody is broken. We are different levels of broken, and we all have different kinds of broken, but none of us have arrived. None of us are 100% healed. None of us are perfect, and it is foolish to judge someone for their different version of broken. That's why we need Jesus, right? We invite him into all the places. And if we can just accept and acknowledge that we are all different levels of broken, it also makes that judgment melt away. I even think this is healthy in my marriage, when it can be really tempting to say, I can't believe my husband would do that or think that, just how it goes when you live with somebody for 15 years. It's like, I am no better than him. He has things that he is amazing at and things he's not amazing at. And so do I. And I can just give him grace on the things that he's less amazing at because he does the same for me. He gives me grace in the things that I am just not naturally as gifted in. And it's in that vein of like, we're a different kind of broken. We're not perfect. Oh man, I love that concept so much. And I wish more people could live in that reality, because then when someone else's brokenness raises its head and roars loudly, you can bring a little bit more grace to it. I want to distinguish for you that in Splankna, we are not talk therapists. So if you've done talk therapy before, this is going to be really, really different for you. Your practitioner, and I'll just tell you what I do because I'm sure everybody does it differently, but what I really enjoy is in my intake, I want to know what is the main thing you're coming in for? What's the reason you booked this appointment in the first place? And they might say something like, I have a lot of anxiety. And I'm like, okay, tell me about that. And we might spend 5 to 10 minutes on that first appointment getting very specific. Like, I want to know, how does this anxiety show up for you? It might show up that you just avoid ever leaving your house and you'd rather just be home. And as long as you stay home, you're fine. But now you're realizing it's getting in the way of you building a life. It might be that you're leaving your house all the time and doing all the things, but your mind is racing. You are constantly, hypervigilantly searching, scanning the room, the area, wondering what everybody is thinking, wondering if you should go home. And it all just gets so overwhelming that you just are exhausted. And you're like, I cannot keep living this way. This chatter in my mind is too much to continue with. So I want you to get specific about it. And then I'm going to ask you, how often, whatever you just described to me, how often do you experience that? Is it like every week, every day, multiple times a day? And I'm going to write that down. Because what I'm trying to do, and what we do in the nursing world as a registered nurse, we're trying to measure and track. Like oftentimes it's somebody's pain. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain like? 1 being you're in no pain at all, 10 being the worst. And they always show you those different faces, right? Because after they take the Tylenol or the ibuprofen or whatever it is, you're going to go back after time has passed and say, okay, now rate your pain. Pain has this tricky way of, you notice it when it's there, and when it disappears, you don't notice the moment that it disappears. It's like the headache. You know when you have a headache, but you can't put your finger on the moment your headache stopped. And so tracking it this way is so helpful, because I don't know how many times, this is a very common experience in my practice. I have people come in and it's maybe their second or third appointment, and I'll say, okay, give me a recap. How are you doing from your last session? What did you think? What have you kind of processed through? What did you think about it? Okay, and how has your anxiety been? And oftentimes they'll say, I loved the last session. It gave me a lot to think about. I had no idea my anxiety was connected to this, this, and this. But honestly, I don't know if I'm feeling any different. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. We've only done 1 session. It was a very introductory session. That's totally fine. And I'll go back to their intake page and I'll say, okay, so you are still experiencing racing thoughts, fear of leaving the house, wondering if everyone hates you, doesn't want you around. You're still experiencing that like 5 days a week. And they pause and they're like, oh, well, not this week. I guess this week it was a little less. Maybe like 2 out of the 7 days I was feeling that way. And then I'll say, okay, great. That is progress. Like, to go from 5 days a week of feeling trapped in your brain like that to 2, I'm going to mark that down as a win. Like, let's keep tracking that and see if that number continues to decrease. Because oftentimes when you're in it, just like the headache, you don't always realize that these things are improving. And it's really, really helpful for a practitioner to point that out to you. I talk a lot about Splankna on TikTok. I have 2 different TikTok pages, and I had this woman reach out to me, and she said, okay, I think I'm ready to try my first Splankna session. She had thought about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. So got her connected. She did her first session. I checked in with her, and she said, you know what? I think it was good, but I just feel so confused of what just happened. Like I had no idea the entire time what we were doing. And I'll say 2 things about that. One, you don't always have to have total conscious assent to whatever it is that you're working on. Like if you don't get to the details of the thing that you're working on, your subconscious knows exactly what you're working on, and the Lord knows exactly what you're working on. And if consciously you don't fully ever get there on a certain event or appointment, it's not like the whole thing didn't matter. It's not like it didn't work. There's still like a subconscious reset going on. So I want to take the pressure off in that regard. But it is way more fun, way more meaningful and deep and validating when you can connect all the dots. And by the end of your Splankna session, you're like, oh my gosh. So when this happened at age 10, I started to see the world differently in this way. And these are the emotions that I was feeling that have basically been stuck in me since I've been 10. And all of that works together into this perfect recipe to make me always feel nervous about the future. What's going to happen next? How can I protect myself? Who can I trust? I have to depend on myself only. I had no idea that 10-year-old event was so impactful for me, and I was still carrying that stuff around. So all that to say, it's more fun. It's more meaningful when you can understand what your session is about. What was the trauma? What happened inside of your emotional world when you went through that trauma? What is the agreement that you made spiritually or subconsciously because of that trauma? But even if that doesn't exist, there's still work being done. But practitioners that are seasoned and confident in what they're doing are going to sit down with you before you start and give you a brief recap of what we're doing. Hey, this is the goal today. And they would explain what I just said. We're going to try to figure out what is a root to this symptom that you're coming to me with. We're going to ask the Lord to search through your database, and He's going to point us to either an event or something generational in your family or a theme of events that you've walked through time and time again that have felt like trauma to you. That trauma is somehow contributing to this symptom that you brought to me today. And if we can clear those emotions by feeling them, and if we can break that agreement that you made through prayer, then that is where breakthrough happens. So here we go. Do you have any questions? And I will tell you, some people want to know all the things. They want to know, why do I hold my hand here? Why did we do that? What does this mean? And that is great. Tell them. And sometimes you'll say, you know what? I've been studying this for 3 years. I don't totally know why this works the way it does if I don't know the answer. But as much as I know, I will happily answer those questions for any client that asks, even if it takes away from our time together, because in the long run, future appointments, they're going to know and understand what we're doing instead of like, I have no idea. Some people's brains are wired to need or want to know the information, and it will be very comforting for them for you to explain it to them the best of your ability. Now, some people are like, I don't care anything about the science behind this. Like, if you say it works, great, let's get into it. I just want to get into it. I just want to see what comes up. I just want to clear this stuff off of me. And that is okay too. You can ask them, hey, I'm going to give you a brief recap. If there's anything else you want me to explain, go into, please feel free to stop me and ask me. Because ultimately, as a practitioner, you are there for your client. This is their time, their hour, their appointment. You're just there to facilitate it. So their level of comfortability and how they want that appointment to run, as far as spending more time talking about the modality first before they jump into it, like that is, as far as I'm concerned, that is totally their call. One more thing I want to go back and add is when I talked about not judging anything that comes up in a session, I want to say that in a little bit of a different way. I don't know what this is, but it can be very tempting when you hear somebody explain a thought process to you, like your client is explaining a thought process to you. Maybe it's, I just don't ever want to trust people again, or because that happened to me, I don't ever want to forgive people. I don't want to, I'm just mad at the whole world, whatever they say. Understand that they're saying it to you vulnerably. It doesn't even mean necessarily that that's what they believe in their conscious mind. They're just being honest with like what they're feeling in that dramatic or scared or childlike subconscious part of them. And it can be helpful to kind of fight the urge to say something like, oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way. You know, that's not good to feel that way, because they know that. They know that already. When a client is speaking from a subconscious awareness, they're tapping into those like below the surface, really quiet thoughts that are in the back. And they are vulnerable enough to share those with you. It's okay to just listen and say something like, I can see how the 10-year-old version of you would think something like that after what you went through. And you can even follow it up with the truth of the word if you feel like the Lord is opening the door for that. Like maybe you would say, man, I can totally see how you would have felt that way as a 10-year-old. That makes so much sense. And it's really cool that you were able to kind of hear yourself think that in this session. Like you were able to think the way your 10-year-old version of yourself would have thought in that moment. That's really cool. I know you know this, but I'm just reminding you that even though you felt so worthless and that nobody cared about you, nobody even noticed you, I just want you to like take a second and remind your 10-year-old self that God has never forgotten about you. He has never, ever, ever left you. And if it felt like he did, just know that sometimes the enemy will whisper those lies to you in trauma. And maybe just leave it at that. But don't neglect validating somebody's experience. Because we all know that emotions are not truth. They don't paint accurate pictures all the time, but they are truth to the person feeling. Like it really is their experience. If I feel scared at something ridiculous, it doesn't help for you to say like, well, it's not scary. Well, for me, it was. So it'd be more helpful if you said something like, wow, so you were feeling really scared in that moment. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Validating someone's emotions is a great place to start making people feel comfortable with you. I want to speak really quickly about this thing called a power differential. And the reason I bring this up is because you don't have to be a licensed marriage and family therapist in order to be a Splankna practitioner. As you know, I'm coming from a registered nurse background. And if you were a licensed therapist, you would have learned all about this in your training. But if you're not coming from that training, it's good to just be aware that there's this thing called a power differential. When somebody comes to someone that they see in a therapist role, or that could potentially be seen as someone who is like stronger than them, more wise than them, more connected to God than them, I'm not saying that practitioners are all those things. I'm saying that sometimes a client can view a teacher, a doctor, a therapist in those ways. And it's good to be aware of that, because the words that come out of your mouth have to be So careful. You don't want to get into telling people what they should do, shouldn't do. If they're working through a hard marriage and they're saying, so should I leave or should I stay? In my opinion, that is not our role as Splankna practitioners. We should not be telling people the answer to that question. If they are contemplating deep questions like that, they need to be working with a licensed therapist who have training and skills in areas that are just very, very different than Splankna. This was really important in my last job, working at the Crisis Pregnancy Center. We would have people ask us all the time, so should I keep my pregnancy or should I not? And we were not allowed to tell them our opinion, which I think is amazing because we are just someone on the peripheral. We are not involved in the day-to-day, and someone to empower someone to make their own decision is very, very different than telling them what you think they should do. Because if they do see you in that way, that you are somehow higher than them in that power differential, you just have to tread so lightly that they aren't just following your voice and your direction as a Splankna practitioner. It's not the role. It's not what we've been trained in as Splankna practitioners. Our job is to support people through a season of healing, clearing out trauma, breaking lies, breaking subconscious vows that they've made that are keeping them stuck, spiritual warfare, praying against the enemy, praying God's blessing over their life, visualize it like setting up the internal structures for them to thrive and for them to think clearly and for them to make godly decisions. Splankna work clears out the gunk so that people can make healthier, stronger, more stabilized decisions. But those decisions, in my opinion, should not be made in Splankna sessions. Okay, last thing I want to say, there's so much on this topic, but I don't want to make this episode too long. Okay, this is something that I find fascinating. I've studied this thing called mirroring and use it a lot in my normal life. And so this is just a me thing. This is not a general, but this I do find very, very helpful and used it very, very frequently in my last job as well. Again, where I was sitting with people in crisis, feeling vulnerable. And it's this concept, like the brain actually has these things in it called mirror neurons. They pick up on the people we're with, their body language, their tone of voice, the way they move their face, their posture. It picks up, it's very limbic system based. Like it's picking up layers of information on these people that we could never consciously be aware of. And in a lot of situations, our body can start to match the person in front of us, their energy, what they're putting off. And it looks like this. If I have like in my old job, when I had a woman come in and she is scared and shocked and intimidated and doesn't know what to do, but she copes with that with this really abrasive, loud, in-your-face energy. It doesn't help for me to be super quiet and really calm. Like I can be friendly and outgoing and, hey, it's good to see you. Come on in. Go ahead and have a seat right there. I'm going to match some of that energy with my tone of voice, the volume I'm speaking at, my expressions, my hand gestures. And there is something very calming about somebody mirroring us when we are feeling vulnerable that just kind of sets the brain at ease. It's like somebody is tuned into me. Somebody is paying attention to me. It's like this felt sense of being seen and heard. Okay. Now, the opposite of that, if I had a girl come in and she was terrified and unsure and shocked and vulnerable, and she's talking really quietly, it would be terrible of me to be like, hey, come on in, sit down. It's so good to see you. And my hands waving everywhere. It would be overbearing, overpowering, and make her super uncomfortable. So be aware of your client. Be aware of the information they're giving you without giving it to you. If they look terrified, Like they can't even make eye contact with you. They scoot as far back into the chair as possible. All their body language is saying, I want to run away. Just pause. Don't plow through your normal spiel. Just like notice, give them a minute and take a minute to just build some comfort there for them. Like, hey, wow, I'm so glad to meet you. How did you hear about this? Oh yeah, wow, yep, I know her. Okay, so how are you feeling about this appointment? Is this something that you've been kind of nervous about? Are you excited about it? Maybe a little bit of both. And if they say like, oh yeah, I don't know, I feel nervous, I don't know what's going to come up, validate. I know that. I mean, totally understandable. You've never done anything like this before. I totally get that. If at any point you have questions for me, please stop me. And then once you get your appointment started with them, check in with them 10, 15 minutes into the appointment. Hey, are you doing okay? I know this is brand new appointment stuff for you. You've never done this before. Are you doing okay? Are you ready to keep going? All of it is communicating safety. So I'm going to end it there. I will summarize it with this. Every profession out there has good people in it and people that are maybe not so good in it. There are good teachers and there are people that you're like, so teaching, that's what you thought your profession should be, huh? There are amazing doctors, there are amazing receptionists, and there are people that are not as amazing in every single profession. So if you do a Splankna session with a new practitioner and it doesn't feel like a good fit, you are completely free to work with somebody else. It might be that practitioner isn't as skilled, isn't as whatever, and it might be that they are actually amazing. It's just not a good fit for your personality or for your event that you're walking through. And you have complete freedom to kind of work with someone else. Get back on the website, ask around, ask somebody for a referral. Total freedom to do that. And I said that was the last thing. I got one more last thing. Okay, so because of this podcast, because of talking with people on TikTok, I do hear from just like the random public a lot. And one thing I've heard is sometimes, not all the time, not even often, but repeatedly, more than once, I've heard, hey, I've reached out to someone on the Splankna website and I didn't hear back from anybody, or I didn't hear back for 2 weeks from somebody. So if you are going to list yourself, your business, your practice on the Splankna website, be faithful to get back to people, even if you're booked, even if you're busy, even if you aren't taking new clients at the time. Just be really diligent, be committed to at least sending them back an email and saying, hey, thanks so much for your inquiry. Let me know what you're looking for. I'd be happy to help, or I can give you a recommendation of someone that I could connect you with. We want to honor the time and the vulnerability of the people reaching out to us looking for help. And again, just kind of being professional, being caring, and creating that sense of safety. So check out my show notes below the podcast. I'll have lots of resources for you there, the Splankna book, the Splankna website. One thing I'd like to do in the future is to start highlighting some Splankna practitioners for the audience so you guys can hear the actual voices of some of these amazing, amazing women and men that work as practitioners. And my hope is that you'll hear their specialty, you'll hear the things that they're experienced in. You'll hear some of their personality, like are they really outgoing and funny and lighthearted, or are they really sweet and motherly and calm? And you might be like, I think I might want to work with that person. And it might give you that bravery or that nudge to be like, okay, I'm going to reach out because I heard them on a podcast or I heard them introduced on a podcast. And again, just creating that sense of safety for you. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you back next week.